were some nights when I'd get in the room, and the first thing I would do, I would call John, so that would relieve him to know that I was in the motel, in the room. You know, when you got the door locked, you're safe. But, you know, after that, a lot of times I would sit, and sometimes I'd just cry. Because I really didn't know what was going to happen or even what I should do.
In 1998, Jackie Breitland's husband, John, received a new heart from the University of Wisconsin's transplant program, one of the leading transplant programs in the world. The UW Health Transplant Program has transplanted more than 12,600 organs for more than 11,000 patients. While the transplant was a success, John and Jackie faced many anxious moments. First, the wait for a new heart and the 2-hour commute between their home in Cashton and Madison. Then, the operation itself. And while John recovered in the hospital, Jackie spent many nights in a local motel, alone and worried about her husband's recovery. Mary Ballacher knows this story all too well. She's received 3 kidney transplants, her first as a teenager.
It started earlier than that. I actually was diagnosed with kidney disease when I was 9 years old. And at that time, they didn't dialyze kids and they didn't transplant kids. So my parents were told I had 6 months to live. And so, fortunately, I went into remission for a period of time, and then when I was a senior in high school, I went into renal failure. And at that time, I went to a physician, and the physician said, you need a transplant, or you'll be on chronic dialysis, or you're going to die.
Lauren Waller's life changed when she learned she needed a stem cell transplant.
All of a sudden you go from a 16-year-old who I'm just really excited to get my driver's license, you know, my biggest concerns in life are, am I going to have a date for homecoming or prom, you know, things like that, to all of a sudden, am I going to live?
John, Lauren, and Mary. 3 people with life or death medical emergencies who share very similar journeys.
So being a single parent, being a parent that was trying to support, you know, a child that was sick, it was difficult. You know, she didn't have a lot of money, and so there was times that she would work 2 jobs. We'd get up early in the morning, we'd drive down from La Crosse down to Madison so that I could be here for my clinic appointment. At times we pulled over at a wayside so that she could just rest for a little bit. At times we'd get to the hospital and the nursing staff would let us into one of the fellows' rooms so that we could actually lay down before clinic opened.
It was a Sunday evening, as I remember, and they said, we have a heart and it's probably going to happen in a couple hours. Well, by the time my wife found out, and actually my parents were still alive at that time, our daughter, my sister and brother-in-law all got together and came down, realizing they wouldn't get here in time. Just that type of thing would be enough stress for anyone to, you know, pretty hard to take, I think.
I had originally been diagnosed with cancer when I was 16 years old, went through 2.5 years of chemo and radiation, was in remission for 7.5 years, relapsed, and went through several more months of treatment, found out, was told the only way I would survive is if I had a stem cell transplant. The entire transplant process itself is incredibly lengthy and incredibly painful. I went in before about 2 weeks before my transplant and went through lots and lots of chemotherapy and total body irradiation. And then on day 0 received my peripheral stem cells and that had been donated to me, and then was in the hospital for, I believe, about 28 days after that.
Cindy Herbst knows the challenges facing transplant patients and their families because her father-in-law, Wes, received a stem cell transplant at the Mayo Clinic. During his recovery, he stayed at the Gift of Life Transplant House in Rochester, Minnesota. Here, Wes and his family could share their experience with others who were going through the same ordeal. It was this comforting, almost home-like environment that captivated Cindy. Inspired by her family's experience in Rochester, she wondered where such a place existed in Madison. It didn't take long for the answer. There was none. With the help of her family, Cindy discovered this historic home near downtown Middleton. Could this be the place that nurtures transplant patients and their caregivers? Could this be the place they share their experiences, help each other, be together? Could this home restore hope?
And so we came and looked at the house and thought, the transplant house.
If this house had been possible back when I had my transplant, what a difference it could have made in my life, my mother's life, my family. And just made it easier for the whole transplant experience.
And people come from everywhere to have their procedures done here, and they need the community support to have that, to make sure that continues to happen.
And I think to have a place like the transplant house where someone could come, there are people here, and they could, just the fact that you've got people that understand your situation.
Today, the Restoring Hope Transplant House still seeks resources to open their doors to people in need. The dream is a place designed for the specific needs of transplant patients and their caregivers. It needs extensive remodeling. It needs a staff. It needs volunteers. It needs a community to embrace a need shared by so many.
Getting across the importance, but not just for someone like me, but that it's so much bigger, how it could help the families, the community, the understanding, the education that goes behind all of it. And so, to me, the house has to open, and the sooner the better.
You can do this. You cannot prevent disease, you cannot prevent cancer, you can't prevent kidney failure, but you can create a home. That is something you could do.